저 이제 온앤오프가 평생 같이 하고 싶은 마음을 이루기 위해서 판도라의 상자를 찾으러 떠나는데 그 과정에서 이제 인간의 삶과 휴머노이드의 그런 삶에 대해서 논쟁을 서로 이제 그래서 다툼을 겪게 되는 그런 이야기를 담은 내용입니다.
Hey everyone, I'm doing something a little different today. Normally I play games on my channel, mostly Bethesda games at this point, but there's a project I always wanted to tackle, and it's the lore in the on and off music videos. Now if you're here, you probably already knew who On and Off is. But the short explanation is that On and Off is a K-pop group that debuted in 2017. Originally had 7 members, now just down to 6. Lost and Loun. We'll get into that when we watch the videos. And On and Off made the news when all of the Korean members, they have one Japanese member, Yuto, all of the Korean members decided to enlist in the army together. If you're remotely connected to K-pop, maybe you heard about this. They were the first K-pop group to ever enlist all at the same time. So it was news, big news in the K-pop world. Now, On and Off is known for a extremely detailed but incomprehensible lore in all their music videos. Well, not all of them, most of them. And one of me and Leaf's favorite things to do is to sit down and watch all of the videos in a row and try to figure out how these details connect. Now, On and Off's given a lot of clues in their Instagram, things like that, secondary sources beyond just the music videos, some interviews at Monotree,
세계관은
other things like that. So for the past several years, Leaf and I have been trying to form this coherent mythology among the videos. Well, it doesn't exist, but we've done the best we can. Leaf's not here, obviously. I know he would have some thoughts if he were sitting here next to me, but alas, he's not. So I'll just have to speak for the both of us. I'm not sure whether I should just spoil certain parts of the mythos or not. I think I'll keep it under wraps for now, and as we watch these music videos, see if you can spot themes. It'll be pretty easy. Unfortunately, I'm not going to play all these videos in their entirety because I'll get a copyright claim. And I'll be in the corner too of the videos and pointing things out. All right, so let's just get into it. We'll start with On/Off, which is the first music video. And it's pretty basic. It covers some of the overarching themes we'll see in the rest of the videos, but it doesn't really lay a solid story foundation, but it leaves you wondering. So let's get into it. So unsure what this apparatus is. We'll see it again, don't worry. We have a lot of space stuff. Yeojin's got a barcode. A lot of themes of the apocalypse, right? The end of days here. The subway station is destroyed. But then we're up here. We're looking at Loun for some reason. Where is this? A lot of imagery for space. Got a globe. Seems like we're communicating with something up there. We've got a railway station. Why is Loun isolated? I'm not sure. Our first asteroid. We'll see a lot of asteroids. Loun's got a barcode on the back of his neck. And he's got a lithium-ion battery he's plugging in. And it suddenly appears that whatever this apparatus is, it's in space, because now we have a spacesuit. All right, there we have it. So this gal comes from space. She's got a spacesuit on. It appears that wherever Loun is in some sort of space station. So what we have is a lot of space imagery, right? We have the asteroids, we have the rockets going into space, we have Loun and sometimes the other boys in the space station itself. The ground beneath is apocalyptic. And the boys are uploading something, who knows what. So let's talk about some of the things we saw, because we would have seen them very quickly. Of course, the first thing is this space station, that Y interacts with in the very beginning. Later, we see MK, pulling a sheet off of something, but we have the Journey to Space poster in the background. And the marquee in the back says, "Now it's over, the end of the world, destroyed, last day, place where of it is gone, we still have hope." So hope is an underlying theme with the On and Off music videos, because they're all related in some way to Pandora's box. And that gets more overt as time goes on, as the music videos go on. But even here in this first video, we see we still have hope, which is, I don't know if they intended for it to be a reference to Pandora's box, but it clearly is. Right at the very end, Pandora, after she lets out all the evils into the world from the box, she closes the lid quickly and retains hope. So mankind still has hope. Another thing that shows up in these videos a lot are trains. I'm not sure what the overall significance of them is, but we see that here in the very beginning because they're at the On and Off railway station. There's just more Journey to Space imagery. We have these clues of the boys are uploading something. Laun was using what appeared to be like a large antenna. So it appears that the boys are uploading something to space, just based on the imagery alone, using this antenna, maybe. We have our first asteroid, never a good sign. Now the barcodes, Hyojin's got a barcode and Laun's got a barcode. The barcodes you'll see in additional music videos, but they're really inconsistent. And if there's any meaning to them, weaving through the music videos, when they do or do not have barcodes, we'll get into that. Then Laun gets hurt and everything starts to glitch out. And we see On and Off in schoolboy uniforms in this scene. Here again, the schoolboy uniforms. Now it appears they're up in space. They've got the globe. The My Name is reference to a later music video that's really not part of the mythos. It just sort of piggies back onto it. And the astronaut. Oh, and my favorite, Jae's face. So many of these music videos, Jae's makes amazing faces, and this is one of my favorite. Also, I want that shirt Wyatt has. How do I get that? So that's it for the first video. Not really a lot to unpack, just laying the framework for what we're gonna see over the next 12 videos. Okay. All right, our next video in the chronological timeline. That is the timeline in which the music videos were released, not any theoretical timeline in which people think the videos should be placed in. And I'll say that's what I'm going to do for this analysis. I'm just going to play the videos when they were released. There are some comments by E-Tion that later videos appear before the older videos in the chronology, but it hurts too much to think about, so we're just going to review them as they were released. I actually have real Henry here this time, not fake Henry. He's sleeping with his face away from us, so you'll just have to trust me. That's a cat. Some thoughts on Complete before we watch it. It's still pretty light on story, but it does help reinforce visuals that we saw in the first music video and lays down or doubles down on some of the themes we've already seen and introduces some new ones, and you'll see that as we get into it. So let's go. Looks a little desolate. We got an asteroid. More technology that'll evolve. Another globe and asteroid. Train. In this video, we're gonna see the members of On and Off enjoying fun times together. Just hanging out and having a good time. We saw Laun at that pod. reminiscent of him at the antenna in the first video. Basketball fun times! But something doesn't seem quite right here. Loun slows down and he looks back. So we have this flare gun. And at one hand, it feels like it's signaling that something's beginning. A flare gun historically means, you know, help. Something's happened and I need assistance. Basketball fun time! Partying, hanging out. And for the first time, we see a significant time rewind. Way more asteroids. JS looking over his shoulder, looking back at someone. All right. So what did we mostly see in Complete that's different? Well, let's talk about what we saw that was the same. We saw them doubling down on asteroids. We saw Loun interacting with some technology. But we see On and Off having fun. You know, the first video, they were just sort of dancing, and we were seeing loosely tied together scenes about being in the space station and being down in the train station. This time, it feels like they're a group of friends. And it feels like something is imminent and it's happening now. This isn't pre-apocalypse, this isn't post-apocalypse, this is the apocalypse as it's starting. So let's get into the imagery that we saw. You know, again, since it happens so fast, we see, right, is Hyojin with that flare gun. We also saw Loun with the flare gun. We see this technology that I mentioned will evolve in later videos, right? We have a computer monitor and some, it appears to be radio equipment. Now, I'm not 100% sure. There could be some radar in there or something too. We got our train. Not really a huge player in this video, but it's there. Again, we see the asteroids. And so far, this is just one asteroid. Then we have a lot more asteroids. And we have this image of JS looking over his shoulder, and we will see that again. So hang on to that. And we have the asteroids and our globe. And again, right here is everyone's having fun, but for some reason, Loun is holding back. He's fallen back, and it's as if something has caught his attention or something is bothering him. Probably all the asteroids. Now, basketball fun times does come back. So put a pin in basketball fun times. But it's just nice to see everyone hanging out and having a good time. Now, one of the things we noticed was when they were hanging out at the pool, they jump in and then all of a sudden time starts to rewind. We did not see that in the first video. We've got Loun at his... I'm not even sure what this is. It's got like a kitchen thermometer on, something futuristic looking. So again, Complete pretty light in lore, but just reinforcing a lot of what we've already seen. So let's move on. Okay. All right, so the next video in our list is We Must Love. And We Must Love is actually the first video that has a coherent story and starts to really add to the lore of the On and Off mythos. It's also the last video that Loun's ever in. After We Must Love, Loun leaves On and Off. And according to all reports, it was an amicable departure. WM Entertainment let him out of his contract without any penalties. And even the rest of the members of On and Off said they didn't realize it was going to happen. They say it came as a surprise to them. The interesting thing about this video is that it almost sets up Loun to leave the group. The way Loun appears in this video is almost a portent of his departure. I don't really have too much to say about We Must Love right off the bat, so let's just jump into it. Now, like the other videos, I'm going to clip through it pretty quickly. And afterwards, I'll put up different screenshots that I think are relevant to what we need to know going forward. So with that in mind, let's get into it. We have asteroids, and we have MK overlooking something. Now we see MK in front of a bunch of TV screens and technology. We have JS in his first appearance as a cyber hobo. We have Loun looking around confused, and we have Wyatt glitching out right there. Hyojin has this device with a trigger, and it seems to take him out of time and space. More glitching on E-Tion. Wyatt has a motorcycle. E-Tion's chronometer shows up. We have a train again. JS looking over his shoulder again. Now, remember this hallway. It will be important. Now, Loun also has a chronometer. And the rest of On and Off, they're in schoolboy uniforms again. But then Loun leaves, using his chronometer. E-Tion seems to be looking for Loun. I mean, they're all looking for Loun. But E-Tion's also looking for Loun. But they don't seem to be in the same time or space. Yuto reminiscing about time in the classroom with his friends, maybe when times were better. And that's it. That's the last time we ever see Loun in a music video. So let's talk about the different things we saw in this video. Again, we have the asteroids. And it's not just one asteroid. Again, it's a lot of asteroids. It seems very apocalyptic. We have MK in front of these TV screens and also with the various technology in the background. But on these TV screens, you can see he's got, I think it's E-Tion in the lower corner and Wyatt up in the city. So he seems to be monitoring things that are going on. Unclear. Loun wakes up in the beginning of the music video. It seems like he doesn't know where he is, right? He's looking around, seems out of place. We see Loun's barcode, again, on the side of his neck this time. Seems very sad. We see Wyatt glitching out in the city as if he's not real. This hallway, like I said, it's important. Committed to memory. And then again, we see Hyojin with this chronometer. Now, this is the only time we see this chronometer in all of the On and Off videos. Unless for some reason in these watch-throughs, I spot something new, which literally does happen every time I watch these music videos. So I wouldn't be surprised if I saw something new. Now, when Hyojin pushes this device, he disappears. We also see, like Wyatt, we see E-Tion glitching. And we see the first instance of these chronometers, these watches that we'll especially see E-Tion have in later videos. E-Tion just looks generally sad, also a reoccurring theme. We have our first instance of what Leaf and I refer to as Cyber Hobo JS. Now, he's always hacking or on a computer or looking information up. He never seems to stay in one place. And when we get into why, he seems to be even more transient in nature. But you can see here he's looking up Loun's information as if he's searching for him. I'm actually seeing here that above Loun's name, it says he's Royd0812. And as far as I know, this is the first hint that there are non-humans in this universe. Other things to note here on his ID is that his ISO 3 is Great Britain, which seems to be different from his country, which is Korea. Now, I don't know what ISO 3 means in this context, but ISO is often a clean room classification or a country designation. So it seems like his ISO 3 country code of designation is Great Britain. Perhaps that's where he originated from. And it also, interestingly, says his address is South Korea, Earth, Universe 01. So in addition to the first hint of non-humanoids, we really have our first solid hint of a multiverse. And JS digs a little too deep because he gets apprehended. Here he is looking over his shoulder again. And the screen says, danger, time travel operate, which indicates that someone has been time traveling. Whether it's JS or Laun, unsure, but now JS is in trouble. We see Yuto in the classroom with the clock saying 3:14. I've tried to look for this time in other videos and have not seen it. Maybe I'll see it this time. They make it feel like it's significant, so we'll keep our eye out. Yuto reminiscing about his time in class with his friends, all wearing those schoolboy uniforms. We see Laun's chronometer, and Laun's leaving, and everyone's very upset about it. I love the way Yuto looks in this shot. He's really giving it his all. Laun's gone. Bye, Laun. And also this train scene, just for good measure. Because there's trains in the video, why not? A lot of this imagery falls back on the imagery we've seen in the first two videos. The asteroids, the schoolboy uniforms, and even time travel. Because in Complete, we saw the rewinding of time. So while it's not as overt as using a chronometer, Complete did at least set us up for shenanigans in time. We'll say that. We Must Love was really setting up a cinematic universe that I think they were going to explore further, but when Laun left, they had to change gears. And in my opinion, they had to retcon some things. With Laun out of the picture, they could no longer rely on the story up to that point. And that takes us into our next music video, Why, when we get into the meat of the current narrative. Without further ado, we'll go to Why next. Okay. All right, now we're really getting into the meat of the on and off lore, and Why really signals a changeover in what we had seen before. You know, scenes with loose ideas, barely a narrative, and moves into something much more coherent. We don't have Laun anymore, so we're refocusing the story and sort of starting from the beginning. Now there's a really confusing statement that E-Tion made in his interview with Monotree.
컴플리트 이전의 이야기를 다루고 있는데
E-Tion says that Why comes before Complete. And when I think about that, it just doesn't click. So if you have any ideas why he said that, please leave them in the comments below. I've just sort of chosen to ignore this statement because it doesn't really make any sense. Before we really talk about Why, there were a series of short signal messages that led up to them to give viewers some hints about what was going to be in the music video and, you know, what the story was going to look like. So we'll just run through these really quick and then we'll get into Why. One of the first ones we see is JS as a cyber hobo. He's got these great shiny pants on, and he's just sort of looking around. Again, especially over his shoulder. Classic JS. Wyatt has this key we see in his signal message. Here again is the key. This is JS and Wyatt having a fight on the steps. There's something going on between the two of them, and we'll get into this later, but we really see Wyatt having some sort of issue with his perception of reality. Again, we see JS and Wyatt together, and we start to see these time portals. We see Wyatt with some interesting glowing tech on his back, and we see two Wyatts. And we'll get into that when we talk about the music video. E-Tion's looking sad, and he's got his chronometer. We see a lot of this inverted reality throughout the music videos going forward, like this scene, and there's another one in the music video I'll point out. In Yuto's signal message, we really get the sense that he's not human. Originally, Laun was the android, but Laun left, so now we're gonna make the new Maknae the android. If you're the youngest, I guess you have to be the android. But we see him focusing on this dog, and we can really see his Terminator style tech. So with all of that in mind, let's just watch Why. In the beginning here, we see flying cars in the background. And we see Hyojin with two different hair colors. A lot of asteroids. And really our first instance of the members pointing guns at each other. Something that shows up Hyojin seems lost, having visions. And MK really takes on this role of an architect, creating or working on this virtual world. E-Tion looks confused, like he just came in from nowhere. E-Tion's chronometer, some Time Bandits Moongate style doors. Yuto is looking for something. Now on Yuto's coat, it references that he is some sort of non-human. There is some tension between E-Tion and Yuto, more guns being pointed at each other. Yuto's clearly looking for something. Ah, there's a key in this painting. But looking for that key gets him in trouble. We see Cyber Hobo JS on the run, hacking. Wyatt's on his motorcycle again. But he's having these visions of him with the other members of On and Off and then being alone. And this is Wyatt in this tube. His barcode is actually on the front of the tube. More tension between E-Tion and Yuto. It seems that E-Tion is hunting Yuto. Yuto's got the key. And earlier, if you noticed, Wyatt was actually holding a key in his hand too. There's a lot of blue flowers related to E-Tion, and I'll cover that once we've seen them all. Hyojin and Jae seem to have been working on something together. Time reversal. JS looking over his shoulder. And Hyojin, they're fighting. Whatever they're doing here, they're now no longer getting along. And it seems to culminate in a betrayal by Hyojin of JS. The first time we see the cube or Pandora's box, it seems to shoot energy out. And we'll see a lot of these flip-flop realities, like everyone's encountering the cube. But what's happening to Hyojin's arm here? It's another Hyojin. There's two Hyojins. Oh, and Jace looking over his shoulder. He's all alone in the city that he seemed to have enjoyed with Hyojin at one point. At the very end, we see Hyojin's energy from his arm going up. I'll switch over now. His energy from his arm going up to, I guess, over here, to this cube. And slowly his body is being consumed by this process. So there is really a lot going on in this music video. People are fighting. E-Tion and Yuto are fighting. E-Tion seems to be after Yuto. Hyojin and JS are fighting. They seem to have been working on a project together, aka Wyatt. Now there's a betrayal there. And we have a second Hyojin who is he from a different time, a different universe, but he's coming back and he's showing this other Hyojin something involving what is now dubbed the Pandora's box. So let's get into the imagery. As mentioned, we see these cars in the background and then they're gone. We don't see them anymore. So it seems to be a pre-apocalyptic thing, back when things were fairly normal. Then the asteroids happen, as they inevitably do. We see MK donning these goggles and really getting into this virtual reality for the first time, really explicitly becoming an architect of this virtual construct that all the members interact with. We see these gates in a warped reality, and as MK's walking around, we see reality sort of glitching out, right? So we saw that in We Must Love, right? We saw E-Tion and Wyatt glitching out. This reinforces that there is not just time travel or multiverse travel, but we're also working with some sort of construct, virtual construct. The betrayal, JS is mad at Hyojin. what did Hyojin do? I'm not sure. But later we'll see the members pointing more guns at each other. This is really the first instance. This gun is a heck of a prop. Wyatt in the vat, looking good. And the two leaders having a conversation at Wyatt's vat. But it doesn't go well. You know, Jace doesn't seem too pleased with Hyojin. They have a fight, and there seems to be this flashback to this washed out, almost sepia-toned memory of them getting along at this city. And it's unclear if this is the first iteration of ONF City, which we'll talk about in subsequent music videos. If it's that or something else. Are we in virtual reality or are we in reality? It's hard to discern, right? It's hard to tell when one is reality and one is virtual reality. But Hyojin disappears. So now we've got JS looking over his shoulder again, looking angry, looking irritated. If you know anything about JS, he gives you that look, you're in trouble. It's a very subtle, angry face, but when the members see it, they run. We've got MK working on Pandora's box. So MK seems to be the impetus for all of this. He creates this cube, or at least he harnesses it. Unsure. Everyone encounters these keys. These keys we learn later are for opening the new world, for opening this Pandora's box. You know, in retrospect, with the naming, seems like a bad idea. And let me tell you, friends, it wasn't a great idea. So all the members start to encounter this Pandora's box, and they encounter these doors that lead them, I assume, into the virtual construct. And here, this scene at the very end is really crucial to the ongoing storyline. What we have here is Hyojin being absorbed by this Pandora's box while the apocalypse is happening. We see the asteroids in the background, and Hyojin is disappearing with the supervision of a second Hyojin. Oh, second Hyojin. He's the bane of my existence. I don't understand his motivations. We'll get into it. Now, it's worth noting and examining these two different cityscapes we see because they're very similar, but they're not identical. In the city where Jace and Hyojin are looking at it, you can see a larger skyline, and it has a lot of different languages, so it seems very worldly, right? We have Chinese, Japanese, Russian, German, and others. We also see part of this city when Hyojin is being absorbed by the cube, but it's not the exact same skyline. Parts of it are very similar, but not quite identical. So I'm thinking that the city that the two Hyojins are standing in front of are the original city. This is the one that exists in reality. And the city that Jace and Hyojin are standing in front of is the city that they've recreated in the virtual construct. I could be wrong. Again, it's easy to read too much into these shots, and sometimes it's easy to not read enough. This isn't the first time we've seen this barcode on Hyojin. We saw it as early as the first video, and it's back. The Hyojin we see earlier in the music video does not have a barcode. We have this sort of inverted version of the world. Again, upside down, reality's flipping. And at one point, we see the members appear and then disappear, as if they are not a part of this world any longer. The major gist of why is that there's definitely a virtual world, and the members are all fighting. And at least one of them is an android. If it's not just Yuto, it may be Yuto and Wyatt. Based on E-Tion hunting Yuto, it seems like perhaps that being an android is not an ideal thing. And we see Hyojin as the first instance of uploading his original self into this virtual construct. He's sending himself up into the cloud, I guess, and he's leaving behind what seems to be an android version of himself to stay in reality. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about that in ONNOF's Instagram. I'll put up these two images so you can read them for yourself, although most of them are cut off. We know there was work done in a lab. There was a time warp and legal chips. Time warp's reality. Hyojin's got an error. Ishin's a waypoint. Yuto's a clue. There seems to be something about feeling human. And for the first time, we see storage of on and off, which comes back later. This other image said they were originally friends. This is so hard to read. They were originally friends as humans. Humans made their memories digitized as they evolved. And then they got into Android like such evolved case. But they became Android and was only remaining in records, but their feelings disappeared. Feeling in a certain boundary cannot be defined. Let's see. Meanwhile, a hacker came in to know the secret too late, visited something multiverse like multiple universes, and aid hacking to deliver the illegal chip online. A person who first found its clue left in the secret place, who maintained a close relationship with him. He wandered in the multiverse. Two got together, but there was not much time left to him. So before we wrap up why, I want to talk briefly about New World. New World was a stage that they did on Road to Kingdom. And it contains some lore that's connected to why. I won't show the video because the video itself is pretty light on the imagery. I put a playlist of all of the videos I'm talking about below. So if you want to go watch it, just click on that playlist and go watch it, but then come back. So with New World, you see the members on stage holding these keys that they found in Y. And an extra he's holding Pandora's box beneath them. And the members all take these keys and slot it into the cube and unlock it. And this is how they unlock the New World, which seems to be virtual reality. I think it creates what we later see as On and Off City, which we'll get into in not the next video, but the video after that. That's really it for New World. It's just an extension of what we saw in Y. So let's wrap up Y in the most succinct way possible, because we've already been here for a little while. And spoilers, as these videos go on, I think their analysis is going to be as deep as this, if not deeper. Especially if I have a special guest with me. Who could that be? So these last thoughts on Y. In Y, the apocalypse is happening. MK creates the cube, aka Pandora's box, which leads to the New World. Some of the members find keys that they use to open the cube in order to get to this New World. And some of the members digitize themselves and send their original memories and selves into this New World. What they leave behind are these androids with quote-unquote feelings that cannot be defined, as we saw in that image. JS the Cyber Hobo is some sort of time-traveling operative, time-traveling / universe-traveling operative. E-Tion's the same way, but instead of being like some sort of agent, he's more of a detective. He's like constantly looking for Yuto. And it's really unclear if JS and E-Tion have digitized themselves. They seem to fill this role of detectives and investigators, and we never see barcodes on them. We don't see any hints like Yuto that they're an android. You know, Wyatt was in a vat, so I feel like there's maybe multiple Wyatts, but E-Tion and JS sort of stand alone. So we'll leave it at that. And our next video is going to be Sukhumvit Swimming. So let's head over there. Okay. I have a special guest for our next music video. It's Leaf. Hooray!
Hi, everybody.
Leaf's my husband, and he also likes On and Off. And we tried to do this originally.
You want me to give me how many years ago? Some number of years ago.
Like many years ago. And this is our second go at this. He was in like all of that video, but this time, you know, he works during the day when I make content. So I can't always squeeze him in, but it's the weekend and now Leaf's here. So the next video we're going to watch is Sukhumvit Swimming. And we just watched Y. And Y is really heavy on lore. Sukhumvit Swimming, less heavy on lore.
It's kind of dense on imagery, but ultimately I feel like the lore is mostly metaphor and dream as far as I can tell.
I would say that it sort of backs up what we already know about the lore we've learned about in the previous videos.
I guess when we'll revisit it now, because it's been a little while since I studied it, but I remember it being sort of a, like I said, kind of almost like a dream sequence that reflects the before the fall, I think, is the vibe.
Before the fall or after the fall?
I feel like before the fall because of the hedonism. Well, maybe it's a little bit of both.
I guess the best way to answer this is just to go right into it. Where is this stupid clock?
I think it's further. It's after this stuff.
Okay. We got MK in a BMX biker outfit out in space floating.
It's space rated.
It says 811, 812.
Yeah, nailed it.
We got barcode chips.
hmm
And we have all these guys on the train have stopped moving. And we've got Jace in a real...
They probably suffocated in their steampunk masks.
Anyway, Jace is looking real evil. And we got Wyatt in like virtual reality, I guess.
Yeah, so we're kind of establishing our realms, right? Our stages. We got this train, which I think is what, like I said, represents kind of the hedonism.
The hedonism train.
Yeah, the party. It's
Well, I
clearly,
guess,
it is a...
is doing,
I mean, look at this guy. He's partying.
doing alcohol drugs.
You got Wyatt hanging out in the cyberspace. You got Hyojin and Jaeus kind of in this fallen...
Yeah, Jace is in a very apocalyptic city.
Yeah, this very fallen world. So these are kind of... and
E-Tion's on his own planet.
mhm.
Okay. So there's too much
Oh,
going.
there's too much. We saw the chrono.
And there was the cube from Y, and we saw the hallway from We Must Love.
Oh, there's a dinosaur back there.
We have E-Tion with a blue flower again, which I'm getting into later. A bunch of code.
A real Little Prince reference here.
Yep. Code implying that this is a construct. We got MK the architect in his like most architect-y form so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his main role in this video is just hanging out alone in that room with his spider bot.
We have both of the leaders with guns and a very apocalyptic Russian city there.
Mm-hmm.
So we got
Yeah.
members pointing guns at each other again. The first time we saw that was in Y, and now we're going to see it consistently going forward. Two Wyatts.
Two Wyatts in the cyberverse.
Time going backwards.
Is this one? No, except in Y we saw this notion of there being duplicates of the members, but we've got two Wyatts in this video as well.
Yeah, well, we mostly saw Wyatt having like asteroid. That doesn't look good. And now E-Tion's watching something launch from Earth. Unclear what it is. Are they fireworks or spaceships? We really only saw two Hyojins. Oh, a bunch of like mannequins or broken androids with barcodes on their arms.
Yeah, androids would be a good guess, right? There's that theme of artificial humanity.
Yeah. And then MK disappears. Time's rewound. And Jaeus and Hyojin never fought. And it's still 8-12.
And not a minute has passed.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about what...
Guns, trains, drugs, and rock and roll.
I mean, it's a song about Sukhumvit, right? And Sukhumvit's like the drinking / red light district in
Haven't been there.
Bangkok. So, I mean, usually on and off songs, the lyrics don't have a lot to do with the lore. So, I'm not going to worry too much about that. But we see a lot of the imagery that we've seen in past videos, like the asteroid. You know what? I'm just going to bring up the thumbnails. Okay, well, the first thing we see, right, is the clock, and it's 8:11 or 8:12.
Now the video starts on this time, ends on this time.
Yep.
It's got to mean something.
And we see MK in this spacesuit, which is really just like bare bones spacesuit, but he's just floating into space, and he seems unconscious.
It's for space-rated stunts.
He's got his BMX bike.
Yeah, if your ramp goes up high enough, you got to be rated for the atmosphere.
They didn't have a real spacesuit. And we see MK. So we go from MK.
They must have burned up that one from the first video, huh?
What video?
The first on and off video.
Oh yeah, that gal had like a more realistic spacesuit in on/off. What did they do with that? They had to return it. Whoever they rented it from.
Brought it back to Party City.
Yeah. So MK, we see MK in two states, right? We see MK floating in space unconscious, but we also see him interacting with this weird spider matrix machine.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really the only way we see him in this video, right? We don't see him interacting with the other members.
Nope.
He's always alone, which could mean a couple things, right? It could mean that we're showing a separation of MK, because I think that this video deals with multiple worlds or realities, or at least settings, and he's in a setting far away from everybody. Or it means that he hurt his leg in real life and had to film a week later.
I mean, he was dancing with everyone in the dance sequences.
Oh, sure.
And then here's another
There's the
picture of it.
machine.
Just lit up so you can see it clearly. Just a weird machine that they've built.
I think it gets the image across, right? It's you get that it's some sort of mainframe or main central computer.
And it comes back in later videos, so
Okay.
keep this one in your mind.
Oh, yeah.
We see barcodes not actually on anyone, but in these chips that are constantly falling. But barcodes, again, being a theme.
Yeah. We get this repeated barcode imagery that is what we believe has to do with being an android.
Right.
Perhaps.
Well,
that you get labeled with a barcode to symbolize that you're a product, not a person.
Right. In Y, we see Hyojin with the barcode at the very end, which I assume is the android Hyojin that's left behind after Meat Hyojin is consumed into the cube.
Yeah, that's what we'll call him.
So these barcodes seem to... Laun had a barcode and we knew he was an android. And Hyojin has a barcode, and I assume that in many of his appearances, he's also an android. So we see this hallway. This hallway has...
Looks good.
I had to remember why I pulled this thumbnail out.
Brought to you by Ridley Scott.
This hallway we haven't seen in previous videos, but we see in future videos. So keep this one in your mind too. This hallway, I believe, emanated in, I just watched all these videos within the last few days. I don't remember this hallway being in the previous videos, but we'll see it again. So remember it. This chronometer imagery, we've seen the chronometer in many states, but we'll keep seeing this version in future videos, but it makes in this form, its first appearance in Sukhumvit Swimming.
Looking particularly steampunk for this video.
Very steampunky. Remember when I told you when we watched We Must Love to commit that hallway to memory? It's back.
Yeah.
They mostly scrapped a lot of the imagery from We Must Love, but for some reason they've kept this hallway.
Yeah, because We Must Love, right? Well, with Laun leaving right after that video, you have to imagine that there's some sort of shift in what the plot line was going to be from where it started.
Right. They had to sort of redo everything because Laun was gone and he was the original robot, and then they turned...
It seems like Hyojin steps into that role.
No, they turned Yuto into the robot.
Oh, sure. And why?
Yeah.
You can see that Yuto has android qualities.
Yes.
May just be an android.
We have a globe. Nothing exciting there. It's just that the globe shows up constantly. And then we see this cube shot from Y. So in Sukhumvit Swimming, we have a lot of callbacks to previous videos. We've got Wyatt looking great. We got two Wyatts. We talked about that when we reviewed the video.
This is a real rudimentary cyber world, kind of going for that Lawnmower Man vibe. Yeah, there's that
dinosaur.
That dinosaur.
Not really like relevant, just fun. In Y, we saw multiple Wyatts. That's awkward to say. And it's unclear whether there is a android Wyatt and a meat Wyatt, or if Wyatt's like suffering some mental schism where he's perceiving the world and himself differently. I'm not sure. Him being an android seems like the easiest solution, especially since they made a Wyatt in a vat. But the imagery they show in Y feels a little bit more figurative than that.
Well, right now, we've seen multiple versions of several members of the band in several videos.
Right.
We don't have too much to go on there, except for to assume that they're all androids. That's the only way you've got a double of yourself at the moment.
Right. We never see a double of JS or E-Tion though.
Right.
So I think E-Tion and JS are both still meet JS and meet E-Tion. I really hate this naming scheme that I've come up with, but now I'm running with it.
You're sunk into it. It's all meat now.
Right? Because E-Tion's like a time detective or a multiverse detective, and he's using his chronometer to like travel. We see in why he just sort of pops into existence and looks around. I think it's because he's new to town, whatever town that is. And Jay is the cyber hobo, we see him just sort of vagranting about. I think they stay as meat.
That could be.
All right, let's look at the next one. And then we see an asteroid, of course. There's got to be an asteroid in every video. And here we have Wyatt watching the asteroids hit this very messed up city, what remains of this city in this desolate wasteland.
Yeah, it didn't look like there was much left for the asteroids to really screw up.
No, I feel like this is in the middle of the apocalypse. This also really confuses me because they've dressed up Hyojin as like a cowboy, historically the good guy, and they've dressed up JS as a Nazi, historically a bad guy. So I'm not sure who's supposed to be good or bad here. Hyojin's motivations have always confused me in these videos. JS I feel a little bit more clear on, except in this instance where he's dressed up like a sexy Nazi.
Yeah, you can call it what it is.
So I'm not sure. They're just at odds. Nazi versus cowboy, the classic combination.
Yeah, I think that was an early 2000s sort of B action movie.
And then Jace wins. He shoots Hyojin.
Yeah, you see Hyojin collapsing and Jay is standing. We don't have like a samurai movie thing where his upper torso is going to slide off. I think he won that one.
Yeah. And then we see in the apocalyptic ruins, we see a bunch of these arms, which have barcodes on it. If you look there on the forearm, you got a barcode, which I always just believe that these were remains of androids after the apocalypse.
Yeah, that actually kind of fits in with what I was thinking. That,
I mean, look at this face right here. It looks very android.
I feel like what we were at this moment of apocalypse is that we were seeing the technologies of VR and AI, just like in real life, were exploding, right? You've got Wyatt's hanging out in this cyberspace, a rudimentary cyberspace, but a cyberplace nonetheless.
Right.
You've got these bodies, I guess, of androids in this burnt out husk of society. So it feels like, right, that's when the collapse happened, is when these things, VR wasn't good enough to take us to the promised land. So we're just left on the rubble.
Do you think these androids are just civilians not related on and off? Because we usually only see on and off as androids, but do you think this is just a regular person who's turned themselves into an android who's not a member of On and Off?
I think so. I mean, this is just my interpretation, but there's nothing about these corpses or body parts that have like a hint of one of the other members.
Right.
So I'm thinking it might just be remnants of society.
And right, we see JS being sad that he shot Hyojin. Oh no. Oh, and we see all the other boys.
Yeah, you got
E-Tion
Asian collapsed over there. There's somebody in the background. Yeah, they're all even MK's back there. They're all their bodies are laying around that.
And we also see E-Tion with the blue rose, and I'm not going to talk about the blue flowers just yet because I want to save that for the end because it's sort of an overarching unrelated thing. And he's watching, we have this shot of these specks coming out from Earth.
You got a flag for what appears to be some sort of Southern California radio station.
And these vessels that are coming from Earth, they explode into fireworks. But when you look at them closer, they're so small in this original shot. They could look like spaceships. And then they explode into fireworks, which I think could be a metaphor for people trying to leave the apocalyptic Earth on spaceships, because we saw a lot of space travel imagery in On/Off. So I feel like people are going into space, but for some reason, it doesn't seem like they make it.
It's kind of hard to tell. This shot is short, but it has simultaneous elements of triumph and catastrophe.
Right.
So it's kind of hard. They made it, I think, intentionally vague, where it's almost hard to tell whether or not it's spaceships leaving Earth or rockets being fired upon Earth.
No, when you watch it, the dots are definitely coming toward you.
They're coming away. Okay, so it's leaving Earth.
Yep.
But yeah, it's either Earth is putting on a magnificent fireworks show for the little prince out here, or it's a failed escape attempt that just happens to look glorious.
Yeah.
Everybody was tasked with carrying a different color of heavy metals.
on their ship when it exploded, it became a beautiful rainbow.
Yeah, like the magnesium ship and the oh, I can't remember back to high school science class.
Yeah, all the little powders you put in a fire at the
Make
camp
different color
when you're
flames.
camping.
Yeah.
And then we see time rewinding at the very end.
I just had a thought.
Yeah.
What if, I mean, we know that a lot of the boys have a mission. It's hard to tell in this. Everyone seems kind of aimless in this video, just sort of
Right.
reacting.
Right.
But we know that in other videos that a lot of them have a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with this theme of the time rewinding and the clock, and my idea on the setting is correct, is this video about somebody trying to undo the apocalypse?
Who do you think that is?
I mean, my first thought would be JS or Hyojin.
Right. Because E-Tion just seems to be mostly concerned with Yuto.
And in this video, oh, we've got a special guest.
Henry! Hi.
In this video, Asian's in his little fucking world,
Yeah.
completely separated from all the chaos that's happening with the rest of the world. He has no clue.
Could it also be MK? He's trying to undo everything?
It could be, honestly. Actually, well, with him being the potential architect and him being in kind of this implication that he's in some sort of dangerous place or a dream state,
Sure.
that it could very well be MK trying to reverse this. Because everybody else is fighting each other, right? Or Asian is just disconnected from it or whatever. Or and Yuto's clearly Yuto doesn't care what's going on either.
Yeah, Yuto is just like...
So it's really in MK's hands. Maybe I don't know if he succeeds, but it seems like he's trying to roll back this moment. And he's also maybe in sort of this dangerous place or dream state.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really know where he is, like in this setting.
Right. Do you think any of this is real, or do you think it might just be in MK's mind as he's suffocating in space?
And honestly, it could be MK's memories of the apocalypse or his dream of all the
Why else
catastrophic imagery.
Why would they show us MK floating in space at the beginning and the end, and no time is passing?
That also, I actually kind of thought at this beginning of the video, that could also be representing that that moment that people talk about where your whole life flashes before your eyes right before you die.
Right before you die. Yeah.
And it could be that, like I said, MK's in a very dangerous, bad place right now, and maybe he's remembering how the world fell.
Yeah. We never really get an answer on what MK's deal in space is, but we'll see MK in a spacesuit floating in space again. So that's it for Sukhumvit Swimming.
That's all there is to say.
Sukhumvit Swimming has like a lot of repetitive imagery that we've seen before and we'll see again. So it's a nice, weird, in-between video that doesn't really...
It's kind of solidifies,
Yeah.
right? A lot of it helps solidify ideas that we had from other videos.
It doesn't expand the lore itself. It sort of solidifies what came before it, and then when
Maybe.
we watch other videos later, Sukhumvit Swimming solidifies the lore in those videos going forward. So it's sort of this weird video that looks backward and forward at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So the next video up after this will be Beautiful Beautiful. So let's go right to it. Before we get to Beautiful Beautiful, there's just a few things I want to address before moving on. In On/Off, in the making of, Loun actually says that his lithium-ion battery is his heart. And he pulls it from his chest and plugs it into the antenna. So it's even more of a uploading process than originally suspected. The second thing is that in Sukhumvit Swimming, I said that Hyojin looked like a good guy because he's dressed like a cowboy. They've dressed up Hyojin as like a cowboy, historically the good guy. And then I said JS must have been the bad guy because he looked like a sexy Nazi. And they dressed up JS as a Nazi, historically a bad guy. Apparently I was wrong because Hyojin's the bad guy and JS is the good guy. In the making of video for Sukhumvit Swimming, Hyojin says he's come to steal time and that JS is going to stop him. He also says that JS is the sheriff, and that he's the thief. They joke a lot in these making of films that JS is the sheriff, but here I think Hyojin actually means it. That JS is in some position of enforcing authority. Okay, now we can get into Beautiful Beautiful. All right, our next video is Beautiful Beautiful. And Beautiful Beautiful seems to carry the story on from why. Things are a little bit unclear. And I don't really want to get too into it before we see the video. So let's just save all that analysis for afterwards. And let's watch. All right, so we have our first glimpse of new On and Off City. Looks a little bit nicer. We've got Jace on the run. And everyone seems to be fugitives of some sort. Jace has been captured by the android guards, and he looks back over his shoulder at this other weird Hyojin. We see the chronometer, and we see Hyojin on the train with a bunch of android passengers. E-Tion's doing his best. Having a great time. MK, of course, classic hacker. And we see Wyatt's motorcycle. There it is. Jace has been captured. And we'll get into that scrolling text on the marquee. Things seem a little glitchy here. But MK ends up taking over the android guards and freeing Jace. Oh, second Hyojin, you're in trouble. But Jace now appears to be freed from his cell. Now everyone's got to get the heck out of there. And both E-Tion and Yuto have these watches that say Chumchwa, dance. Wyatt saves Hyojin with this beautiful, beautiful car. And Jace has escaped. We see Hyojin here glitching through space. Hooray, On and Off City's been restored. We got the jumping side shoulder bump that we saw in We Must Love. We got the cube covered in graffiti. Jace, the king of looking over his shoulder. Okay. That's Beautiful Beautiful. So let's talk about what we just saw. On and Off seem to be fugitives in their own city, which is strange. The government, the body of authority in the city, has taken Jace captive for reasons. We'll get into that. And all of On and Off uses their tools at their disposal to get him free. So let's look at some stills. We see Jace being taken captive by the android guards, and we see him in his jail cell. And as we're getting these flashes of Jace, we're also getting flashes of a Hyojin that looks different than the one who helps free him. Jace always be looking over his shoulder, looking pissed. And we see this Hyojin more clearly. His hair is completely different. He's got some cyberpunk implant on his cheek, but no barcode that I know of. We get the jumping side bump between On and Off members. We saw that last in Complete, I think, at the basketball court. And we see the chronometers. Yuto also has one. And this watch says Chum Twa, which means dance, which leads us into Ugly Dance, the next music video. A little teaser there. And we see MK as the hacker. He's always sort of in this hacker slash architect position. And the interesting thing about MK's scenes is they show a lot of glitching. Wyatt is helping here, and we see his motorcycle. MK takes over the android guards and makes them dance. And we have these brief glimpses of this marquee. And I want to show you an image that gives you a better view of all this text. Here is a picture of Jace from On and Off's Instagram. It was hidden. And I have gone through their Instagram and looked at all of their entries, and especially entries where they have multiple pictures in one post. And this one is nestled in there. And it says, the time warp is possible, but the timeline has messed by past travels and classified as a first-degree criminal. Okay, let me just read into this. A time warp is possible, but the timeline has been messed up by past travels, and time traveling has been classified as a first-degree criminal offense, which J.S. now is guilty of. We see J.S. from the Instagram, we see J.S. as an agent, confirming, yes, that Beautiful Beautiful does take place in the city of On and Off, and that J.S. is a secret agent. Interesting to put that right on there. And J.S. confirms in the making of film that these guards that are escorting him through the train are in fact androids, which makes me wonder if everyone who has their face covered in a mask in these music videos is an android. I'm particularly thinking about the horde of attackers that Hyojin unleashed on J.S. in Y. Are those also androids? Beautiful Beautiful does confirm that J.S. is traveling through time, something we've suspected since We Must Love. And if we apply that logic, then we have to start thinking, who is the J.S. and why? Is he a contemporary J.S.? Or is he a J.S. from the future? And if he's a J.S. from the future, what is he doing and why? His motivation always seems to be help the members, or being helped by the members. And I'm thinking in why that he may have come back in time to help form On and Off City, to help the members digitize their thoughts and feelings, to help save them from the ongoing apocalypse. I don't know that being replaced by an android is necessary, but it's something that he and Hyojin appear to have been working on, to the point where Hyojin may have unleashed an android army on J.S., though I'm not sure why. If J.S.'s motivation for time travel is to save the members, then what's Hyojin's motivation? We see in both the music videos and in images that Hyojin has an android counterpart. And I don't think Hyojin's motivations are necessarily evil or bad. I think he also wants to help. He seems to be doing it in a way that may be perhaps skewed by his limited capacity for feelings, while Hyojin's original thoughts and emotions that have been digitized seem a little bit more earnest. Now, I have questions about On and Off City. Is On and Off City the digital construct that was created through opening up Pandora's box with the keys / the new world? Or does On and Off City exist in a different time, place, or universe? I'm not sure. We get a clue about the digital nature of On and Off City through Your Song, which is not a full lore music video, but we can look at some screenshots from it when we get there. Beautiful Beautiful is an amazing song and a great music video, but its lore is mostly confirming what we know and building out On and Off City more fully to appreciate, right? It's a gorgeous place, but it has problems. So with that in mind, let's move on to Ugly Dance. I've run out of hats to wear, so I'm just recycling them now. Ugly Dance is so light on lore that I don't think we need to watch the whole music video. Instead, let's just look through some stills together. So the music video opens up with the same android guards we saw in Beautiful Beautiful. They're deactivated, but they come to life. We flip to On and Off in a studio where they are dancing, and they alternate between white and black outfits. The black outfits, again, are very reminiscent of a school uniform, and there are certain points during the video where everything glitches out and you see these android guards dancing in On and Off's place. And at the very end, everything glitches out, and you're left wondering what exactly is reality. Well, E-Tion in the making of video said this: according to the storyline, we took over this place with our dance. I'm of the opinion that On and Off is not actually in the dance studio, that they're manipulating these android guards and broadcasting imagery of themselves dancing over them, broadcasting this ugly dance out to On and Off City. Ugly dance is about letting the music in and dancing, just feeling it, and not worrying too much about how you look. The lyrics in Ugly Dance also reflect the same idea in Beautiful Beautiful, that we, as people, are art. It's just a good message. Just get out there and dance. Ugly Dance is pretty simple, and it's got a very simple, straightforward message. But we'll see a hint of Ugly Dance again in a future video. Alright, well, the next video popping, for as little lore as Ugly Dance had in it, I don't even know where to start with popping. So let's just go. Okay. After Y, popping introduces the most new lore to the On and Off mythos. Popping doesn't even feel like it's a part of the same universe. Popping almost feels like a retcon of On/Off. And while popping introduces a lot of new lore, we also see a lot of imagery we've seen in past videos. Thinking about everything we know so far, let's take a look at popping. The first thing we see is Hyojin's eyes opening with this scanner crossing his face with a medical sounding monitor, and his heartbeat starts. Here, if you look closely, all the members are watching images from previous music videos. We don't have a falling asteroid from the sky, but on the stage here we do have the word asteroid spelled out. Now, in this little world they have, things seem a little strange. When he strikes the ball, this happens. We have basketball fun times again. And we have the members pointing and shooting water guns at each other. Now we introduce a totally new scene. We go from this sort of idealistic playground to a NASA-like station. Yuto's going down this hallway, which should look familiar. And on the door is his barcode and his serial number. We've got MK and Jace in spacesuits, and we see these exact same guard models, these android guards that we saw in Beautiful Beautiful and Ugly Dance. Yuto blows something up, and it doesn't look good for MK. More stuff blowing up. Members pointing guns at each other. And now Jace is in the Ice Age. Whose ship is this? Is this MK's ship? Unsure. The imagery in the music video is very nostalgic of child's play, contrasted with this violence. JS is reviewing the memories, and we have a second Hyojin. Wyatt is holding his heart. And what is the second Hyojin doing? We see the first Hyojin lying beneath him on the floor. And he covers his eyes. Meanwhile, we have poor Jace here stuck in the Ice Age. I'm unsure what that building is in the final scene. Some people have said it's a spaceship. It doesn't look like a spaceship to me. It almost looks like another camcorder or perhaps a building. So if you have some ideas on what that building could be, or that giant black monolith at the end, put it in the comments. I want to hear your theories. Popping is a hall, so let's just look through the imagery together. The first thing we saw right was Hyojin sort of being activated by this scanner and his heartbeat starting. Almost like he's being booted up like a computer. We have all the members sitting in a half circle in this space station environment, reviewing footage from their previous MVs. Then we go to the members goofing around in this soccer field. We see E-Tion doing a bad job with the golf club, and when he strikes it, he seems to shatter or interfere with the VR dome over them. We got the basketball fun times, and Again, we've got the members pointing guns at each other. This is a story about members fighting, so while it's not quite as literal in this music video, we still see hints of that tension. We cut to the space station. Again, we've got the Yuto tube there with all his information that he goes into. And if you look closely at that tube, it's the exact same thing we saw in Sukhumvit Swimming. So it's back. This leads us to believe that whatever's going on in Sukhumvit Swimming, like Leaf said, it may actually be MK's last memories as he's floating in space. We glimpsed this hallway then, and now we're seeing where this memory may have actually emanated from. We see these guards from Beautiful Beautiful, and we see Yuto creating a distraction by blowing up a catwalk. Both MK and Jace don these spacesuits. They look much more realistic than any other iteration of spacesuits we've seen so far. And they're about to set out. Now we get a really good, clear shot of their spaceships here. It doesn't look anything like we saw at the very end. Hyojin and Jace as the leaders have a moment here. And we see MK staring at a missile as it's about to hit the space station. It doesn't even seem like he's had a chance to get in his ship yet. We see these missiles wreaking havoc on the space station, and we watch Hyojin witness one of the spaceships blowing up. Whose spaceship is this? Who managed to get on their spaceship? The missile hits the space station, things go up in smoke, and someone ran in and covered the entire spaceship with graffiti. That's how bad you know it is. Anyway, we see second Hyojin here, who is also blonde. So when the Hyojin gets booted up in the very beginning, what Hyojin are we actually looking at? Are we looking at the Hyojin in white? Are we looking at the Hyojin in black? The way the scene transitions from Hyojin booting up to the members sitting in a half circle, it makes you believe that it's the Hyojin in white. But we have no way of knowing. Poor Jace is stuck in the Ice Age, looking so small, and we see this building in the background. He's either reviewing memories or he's shooting new footage. And then we have poor Jace just stuck here in what ONF has called the Ice Age. Looking pretty lost. Looks pretty desolate, miserable, and cold out there. So let's look at what the members have said in the popping making of video. MK directly references Sukhumvit Swimming. He says here of his spacesuit and popping, it's like the spacesuit for Sukhumvit Swimming, and that the story connects. Wyatt says when he's holding his hand over his heart, but the heart projected onto a shirt, that he's hesitating between being a human or a robot. So, which Wyatt is this? Is this an android Wyatt, or is this a human Wyatt? With MK's confirmation about his spacesuit, it's pretty clear that from popping we go right into Sukhumvit Swimming. And that the missile that hit the space station has one way or another ejected MK into space. Now what's going on in MK's mind? Is he dying? Is any of that real? Are the members in popping human or android? Sometimes I think popping is the very beginning of the story, and that these boys aren't androids, that they are human, because we don't see a lot of clear indication that any of them are androids. At least in the traditional ways we recognized androids in the past. They usually make it pretty obvious when somebody is an android. We saw Yuto's Terminator vision, we saw barcodes on Hyojin, Laon, and Yuto. But if these are the Meat Boys, then what are they doing on a space station? If they're on a space station, then there's no need for them to digitize their thoughts and memories and replace themselves with androids. Regardless of whether the members in popping are android or human, they don't seem to be in any danger from the apocalypse happening on Earth. I don't know. I think about popping and I hate it every time. So again, tell me your thoughts about popping in the comments. I know a lot of people look at Popping and say, well, all the members died here. It's very possible. Right at the end, we see everyone laying on the ground while second Hyojin comes in. MK maybe asphyxiating in space, and Jaeus somehow made it to the Ice Age. And I don't think Jaeus is dead, because it would be really weird to be having scenes with Jaeus if he were dead, especially considering what we see in Love Effect. The problem is that Popping sort of stops. We don't get a lot of imagery in the music videos going forward that extend the Popping storyline. We get hints and references. It's not the same stretch of videos that all connected together, like Why to Sukhumvit Swimming to Beautiful Beautiful. Popping exists in, if you will, a bubble, and I just don't know what to do with it. So let's get away from it and go on to Goosebumps, because Goosebumps actually ties us back to Beautiful Beautiful and Ugly Dance, and I can cope with that. Okay. All right, we're coming down to the wire. We only have 3 music videos left to discuss and some stuff about your song, but right now we're on Goosebumps. The imagery from Goosebumps draws heavily from Spider-Man Far From Home, the 2019 movie. And in Spider-Man Far From Home, Peter's main nemesis is Mysterio. And Mysterio has a background in special effects. And I love that in the movie they give him this outfit that's covered in a pattern that they use in performance capture suits. Now, I'm not going to draw any direct comparisons between Far From Home and Goosebumps. I think the team saw the movie and thought, wow, these would make great scenes for our music video. And that's where the comparison ends. So with all of that in mind, let's look at Goosebumps. All right, so we open up and we see E-Tion dancing in the studio, being hunted by drones and those same android guards. Now this references heavily back to Ugly Dance, the studio. We see On and Off City, the flying cars, and now Yuto is in a mysterious portion of the city we've never seen. Why it's raising up these buildings. Hyojin shatters through this glass, and we see him with 2 dragons. And now we see the members pointing guns at each other. We see Hyojin pointing guns at Wyatt, even though it is our understanding that Hyojin in some part had his hand in making Wyatt. E-Tion and Yuto are meeting up, and Jaeus seems to be, again, the secret agent. Wyatt's on the run from, I assume, androids. They're faceless. And we see an android hand interfacing with something. Aha! Those chips and MK in that background. Who is Jaeus aiming at? Oh, we see E-Tion on his planet, and his blue flower is disappearing. And wherever we are, it certainly doesn't feel like reality, does it? Glitching. And the chronometer going backwards. And we see the cube looking a little different, but resting in a cradle. All right, so that's Goosebumps. Before we get into the clips, I just want to say when I first heard and saw Goosebumps, I lost my mind because it is unlike any other song On and Off had put out at that point. Now, every On and Off song is great, but I'm biased. And their usual tone is a very bright, poppy, upbeat song, with a few exceptions. Goosebumps is dark and gritty and crunchy. And when I first heard it, I thought, what the heck is this? Do I like it? And then I quickly answered that question by saying, yes, I love it. One of the first things we see is E-Tion in this building, which appears to be very similar to the studio from Ugly Dance, and he's in there dancing. We've got all the android guards and the drones zeroing in on him as he's dancing. And then we get to see the inside of this studio where he is dancing, and it sure looks a lot like the size and space of that studio from Ugly Dance. But this is more of a VR framework, which leads back to that idea that in Ugly Dance, they weren't really there at all. They were controlling the android guards and projecting their images over them to send out that message of Chum Chua. The next thing we see is Yuto showing up in this grittier city labeled War Zone. You often can't see the leg on the R in War, so there's times where it just looks like Wad Zone. But we also see Wyatt lifting up these gritty buildings out of nothing as he's tutting. Wherever they are, it's certainly not pretty. And what's something we know Yuto and Wyatt have in common? Well, we know Yuto is an android, and we know that Wyatt spent significant time in a vat with a barcode pasted on the front of it. I think this means he's an android, considering the glowing tech on his back. So, for some reason, these two androids have found themselves in the War Zone. War Zone is appropriate considering this whole story arc is about members fighting. We see Hyojin shattering through this glass, or this mirror, and we get a glimpse of a different Hyojin. Different Hyojin, different hairstyle. We see the first Hyojin with these two dragons in the background, and we later see both Hyojins with these two dragons facing each other. And as the dragons hit them, they disappear into nothingness. We also see Hyojin being flung back into darkness, and I want you to remember this because we'll see this again. We get to this black Hyojin pointing guns at Wyatt. Here's a better look at them, and when Wyatt looks at them, they disappear into nothing. We see E-Tion and Yuto not fighting, and then we see Wyatt being chased off this cliff by these faceless actors. Now, I supposed earlier that anyone who didn't have a face was an android, or anyone wearing a mask. And I'm wondering now if this is Wyatt being chased by a army of androids, much like JS was in Y. We see this android hand interfacing with something, and then we see this image of what can only be MK the pirate again from Sukhumvit Swimming. We see those three screens in the background, so we know that's his weird spider bot. And then we get this shot of these barcode tags falling, which is a direct reference again to Sukhumvit Swimming. We see a lot of the members pointing guns again, but we see JS the agent with a rifle scoped in on. And then the next thing we see is E-Tion as the little prince again, doting over his flower whose petals get blown away. We see MK doing MK the architect stuff. And nothing about this feels real at all. Which leads us back to the question, is MK actually an architect of some virtual construct? Or is he just suffocating somewhere in space? We have him against the background of space and planets here, connecting us to the concept that maybe he's still floating in space. We see the chronometer again, but it's going backwards instead of forward. And at the very end, we see what appears to be the cube. It looks a little different. Not sure why it's orange, but it's coming down to rest in this cradle with all these wires leading out of it. It almost feels a bit matrixy, as if this is where the cube is always resting and is always meant to rest. And when it rests in its cradle here, that's when we're able to interface with On and Off City or some sort of virtual construct that the boys find themselves in. I spilt a chicken salad sandwich all down the front of myself, so I had to change my clothes. Anyway, going back to Goosebumps. Goosebumps doubles down on a lot of lore and imagery we've already seen. expands it in a way, but it's very loose. I think what we can mostly take away from Goosebumps is that On and Off City, even after Beautiful Beautiful, is in chaos. That things are worse than they seem, and that the members are all still fighting. So we had a respite in Beautiful Beautiful, but now things are crashing back down. In Goosebumps, we have a lot of direct ties to Sukhumvit Swimming. So that does mean that Goosebumps, Sukhumvit Swimming, and popping are all related. The tie from popping to Sukhumvit Swimming is easy, and the tie from Goosebumps to Ugly Dance and Beautiful Beautiful are easy. And they all have Sukhumvit Swimming as this shared point. It certainly doesn't help me understand popping more. If anything, it just makes it worse. So with that in mind, let's just move on to, well, let's briefly talk about your song. While On and Off were in the military, they released an album called Storage of On and Off. You may remember that name from Why, and Storage of On and Off filled this hole for fans while all of On and Off were in the military. The main track on Storage of On and Off is Your Song. And we don't need to watch Your Song. We can just go through some clips because it's mostly a fan song. And because they were in such a tight time crunch, they really didn't do much. They recorded in front of a green screen, and the members didn't even get to see the finished product before they left for the military. But it is tied to On and Off City. So let's take a look at some stills. At first we see members walking down a road with virtually nothing surrounding them. But as the music video goes on, we start to see more and more buildings crop up out of this template, this flatness, until we have a robust full city, even with flying cars. Here we get to see one of these flying cars up close. And then about halfway through the music video, On and Off City stops looking like a template and gets fleshed out into a full proper city. We see the members on a helipad looking at these floating cubes. Here are more of these cubes in the city. And we finally get to see the cube, capital T, capital C. And again, it looks a little different. This time it looks a little bit like a Borg cube. And then at the very end, the members disappear, as if they were never really there in the first place. At times, it's not clear whether On and Off City is a virtual place, a construct created by MK, or if it's a city in a different universe or different time. Now, in your song, it leads you to believe heavily that On and Off City is a virtual city, does not exist in reality. It gets me thinking, though, because I wonder if On and Off City, the virtual version, is based on a real city that the members had encountered at some point before the time traveling began. Is On and Off City built in the image of a real place that once existed? Or is it a completely new and independent creation? That's really it for your song. Now that we've touched on the imagery there, we can feel free to move on to Love Effect. Okay. Love Effect was On and Off's first comeback after they got out of the military. And at first blush, I didn't think Love Effect had much lore in it. However, the more and more I watch it, the more I realize I was initially wrong. Where Goosebumps was crunchy and dark, Love Effect is bright and cheerful again. Love Effect also had a minute-long trailer that preceded the full music video's release. And I want to look at that too. We'll watch it in full since it's just a minute, and then we'll get into Love Effect directly after that. So let's just watch them both. We start with JS looking through these binoculars and again looking confused, like on and off and on at the start of music videos. The other members appear around him, and they're in this very verdant, beautiful scenery. Yojin has a barcode on his neck. And they encountered this bubble, which appears to be full of lotus blossoms. Interesting. Now we'll just get right into Love Effect. So the first thing we see here is Hyojin shattering through realities, followed by them looking a little lost, and then opening this box in which they let out all these sparkles. And this is the only time we ever see Hyojin do this dance move. After this, he just steps through it in every other performance. Must have hurt his leg. It's nice just to see the boys having fun. Here we got basketball fun times. And if you notice that puddle, we'll touch on that. Things don't seem quite real in these shots. For the first time in a long time, it looks like ONF is actually having a good time. We have this beautiful pollen type wave of love here on the fields. And then they disappear, as I often do at the end of these videos. As I just said, Love Effect seems to show the boys having a good time for the first time in a long time. So let's take a look at the imagery to just get a real good feeling for how happy the boys finally are. We'll start with the trailer. We see Jay is here looking through binoculars, which is very reminiscent of him looking through that camera at the end of Popping. And unlike the end of Popping, where he's in an ice age, he's now in a very beautiful, serene, green field. Quite the opposite of the ice age. He looks around, confused, which happens quite a bit in on and off videos. And then suddenly, we get a view of the rest of the members, as if they've also just popped into existence. They approach this giant bubble of water, which seems to pop. And when the bubbles all spread out from this big bubble of water, it actually erases Hyojin's barcode from his neck. And then he mugs the camera and smiles. Now, the first thing we see in Love Effect is Hyojin shattering through several realities, shattering through glass like we saw in Goosebumps. We see the boys summoned into a space again, and they seem confused about where they are. E-Tion opens up this chest, and from this chest comes out what they've dubbed a wave of love. Now, in my opinion, this box still represents Pandora's box, and the wave of love is hope, the last thing that's remaining in Pandora's box after she shuts it. There's also a version of the story of Pandora's box where Pandora doesn't close the lid. She keeps it open. Hope comes out and says, "Don't worry, I'll go out into the world and spread hope to people." And it almost appears that this is what the love wave is. That this wave of love is indeed hope going out into the world and trying to make amends for all the evil that were released before it. I'm sorry to Wyatt for this screen capture I took. Here we see the wave of love zipping out, and it infuses their hearts with love. We see the members running and enjoying themselves through different sets and scenery in Japan, followed and accompanied by this wave of love. They dance, have a great time, go to the store, try on a bunch of clothes, and just generally are doing things that friends would do together. They're not fighting in any way. We see basketball fun times, and the interesting thing about basketball fun times here is that they chose this shot with a puddle, which shows the inverted version of the basketball hoop in their heads. This is not a coincidence. On and off videos love inverted scenery. We've seen it several times before, and now we see it here again. When we near the end of the music video, we see them in this neighborhood, where the wave of love is impacting reality around them, leading you to believe that whatever this is, it's not exactly anchored in reality. But it doesn't matter because everyone's having a great time. They look so relaxed and happy. And in the very end, they dance in this flower field with what appear to be sparks from the wave of love. And then they disappear, as if they were made of pollen. I also want to talk about 2 images from their Instagram real quick. In this, it says, "The wave of love touches us. Following it, we could be sync. We completely accept the effect. After that, our love is stronger than ever." And I'm in a whole new world. I feel I'm alive. Happiness, sadness, joy, and tears. I can see the true meaning of the words. Finally, I am on the way to love. I am of the opinion that Love Effect shows the members regaining their humanity. Hyojin's barcode disappears, they're not fighting, they're enjoying themselves, and the wave of love/hope infuses them with a new sense of purpose. Where the digitizing process left the members with a neutered set of emotions, here we see Love Effect returning some of that to them. Love Effect may be the members' digitized thoughts, emotions, and feelings within a construct. So we may be looking here at the digital versions of themselves, not the Android versions of themselves. We don't see the cube and we don't see MK as an architect, but we do get several hints that this is not based in reality. Love Effect may be an attempt to bridge the digital versions of the members back to the bodies that they left behind in the real world. Whatever it is, they seem to be having a great time, and I'm happy for them. Oh, but that doesn't last too long. Gosh, maybe we should look at Buy My Monster. We've done it. We've reached the end. We're finally at Buy My Monster, and as of June 26, 2024, this is the last comeback On and Off has had. Now, I'm sure they'll have another one in 6 to 8 months, and we'll have to come back and make another video. But for now, our lore ends here. Where Love Effect was a tone shift from Goosebumps, from something dark and heavy to something light and cheerful, we see that tone shift back to dark and heavy again with Buy My Monster. Like Love Effect, the first time I watched Buy My Monster, I didn't think there was much lore. And whatever lore there is isn't directly tied to the previous series of videos we've seen. However, there are hints and imagery that are similar to what we've already experienced in the past 12 plus videos. They also released a story film that led up to Buy My Monster, and we'll look at that too. It's not too long, so we'll just watch it in its entirety. There are subtitles for this on the YouTube version, so if you want to understand better what Wyatt is saying in his narration, go on over there and take a look. We see 2 Wyatts, or do we?
I was nobody. The story began from here. A letter from an unknown origin. Because of it, everything has changed.
JS turns into Hyojin here.
And confusion has started.
A lot of talk about confusion here.
Unknowingly,
Now we have
the
E-Tion,
moments I recognize.
and when E-Tion looks into the mirror and looks away, he becomes Yuto.
Places I cannot recall.
Yuto turns into MK.
Originally, I didn't exist.
Now there it says why it says originally I didn't exist. And if anyone knows what that says, I would love to find out. A lot of mirror imagery again. And the members alternating back and forth between different versions of themselves. Hyojin's watering can was going backwards. I should not be here, Wyatt said.
Run away. I gotta run. Hurry. I need to get out of here. Now. Am I?
Who am I? Wyatt asks at the end. Alright, now we'll get into the actual music video, which starts with Hyojin coming from who knows where. Now, in By My Monster, we see new imagery that we haven't seen before, especially feathers and the color purple. What Wyatt has here is a camcorder, like a love letter or almost like a journal entry, talking about love. This scene is interesting. We have Yuto alone at a writing desk, looking confused, like he just woke up or came in from somewhere. We have E-Tion in this rubble of this abandoned building. He's got a big E on his shirt so you know who he is. Whatever Yuto's working on, he can't finish for some reason. And then E-Tion sees an alternate version of himself. The imagery of E-Tion running and the backdrop of these abandoned buildings makes it feel very similar to Y. We have this imagery of Jaeus in front of a large bird cage, letting a dove go. But in the end, he's not able to escape his cage. He's stuck. Extremely stuck. Yuto's pulled back, and we've seen a shot very similar to this. We have reversal of time. And that's the end of By My Monster. So what's going on in By My Monster? It seems less literal and more metaphorical. Instead of just humming and hawing over it freely, let's look at the screenshots first. Starting with the story film, right, we see several Wyatts, but it's really only one Wyatt. It seems like Wyatt is having perceptive issues again. Jaeus gets this letter that says personal confidential, and that appears to be Hangul, but I can't read it. Let me look at the 4K version. No, even looking at the 4K version, it's really hard to see what this says. The last word may say Joa, but it's really blurry. A lot of mirrors are used, and we've seen mirrors and reflection imagery used heavily in the past. We see the members shifting between white and black outfits, something that they've definitely done in the past. We've seen Hyojin in white and black. We've seen the members in Ugly Dance shift from white and black. I'm not going to read too much into it other than white and black represents a duality. We see Hyojin almost killing flowers and then instead watering them, except the watering can is moving in reverse. And then we get into the actual music video itself. One of the most prominent scenes in this music video is Yuto at his writing desk. He appears unsure of where he is. Whatever Yuto's writing, he's unable to finish. Not only is he unable to finish, but the other members seem to stop him from finishing. Perhaps he's trying to write down on this piece of paper who his favorite member of ONF is. We see Yuto getting pulled backwards, and we saw a shot very similar to this with Hyojin in Goosebumps. E-Tion wakes up in this abandoned apartment building. He sees a different version of himself, and then all heck breaks loose. We see JS with this dove that he releases, and the backdrop is this giant bird cage. However, JS, unlike the dove, does not leave the bird cage. In fact, the bird cage seems to hold him in even tighter, preventing him from escaping at all. We see a lot of this feather imagery and the color purple. And we don't spend a lot of time with Hyojin in this video, but when we do see him in this shot, rain is falling upwards, moving backwards. And then at the very end, we get this shot of two hands holding. And in the on and off official reaction to the music video, Hyojin confirms that this is his and E-Tion's hands. There are also these two shots of the members all putting their hands in the center, which is reminiscent of them with the keys unlocking the cube in New World. There's no asteroids, there's no cube, there's no train or globe, no guns, and no barcodes. The only theme that is common between Buy My Monster and the rest of the music videos is duality. There's also this feeling of being trapped, unable to escape, confusion about who the members actually are. So my brief thought on Buy My Monster is that if Love Effect is about the virtual boys becoming more human, then Buy My Monster is about the androids being more confused about who they are, how they feel, and what their place in the world is. I'm led to believe that this is more related to the android versions of the members because this is much more anchored in reality. We don't see any virtual reality blips or interference. We don't see any changes in the buildings, anything like that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about E-Tion's blue flowers. We see 3 of them. The first blue flower of E-Tion's we see is in Y, and it's a blue orchid. Now, orchids do sometimes grow in shades that are bluish, but they are extremely rare. I found 2 things about orchids in Korean culture. The first is that scholars used orchids as a metaphor for friendship and integrity. In the past, scholars used to breathe in the fragrance of the orchids for clues about the owner's honesty and trustworthiness. Orchids were also used as bribes, so much so that in 2016, Korea was still passing laws that prohibited giving flowers in connections with one's duty. They were at political bribes. And the continuing expansion of laws against the exchange of orchids actually hurt Korea's orchid industry. E-Tion is a detective, and he's had a falling out with Yuto for whatever reason. However, he never fully arrests or apprehends him. He shoots a gun at him, but he always seems to let him escape. Whatever E-Tion's mission is, their friendship seems to transcend this obligation. The blue orchid in this scene seems to represent their friendship. And like a blue orchid, which is very rare, perhaps Yuto and E-Tion's friendship is also a rare one. Detective and android? Then we get into Sukhumvit Swimming. E-Tion's appearance on Sukhumvit Swimming is a direct reference to the Little Prince. On his planet, the Little Prince had a rose that he tended for, and eventually left. However, blue roses do not exist in nature without genetic manipulation. Blue roses typically symbolize mystery or the impossible, or a miracle, because if you have a natural blue rose, a miracle must have happened to bring it into existence, since they do not occur in nature. Sukhumvit Swimming is basically impossible, right? Time does not pass in the music video, and in fact, it rewinds. Its impossibility is shared with the existence of this blue rose. And if MK manages to survive whatever predicament he's in, it'll also be a miracle. Finally, we see E-Tion's blue flower one last time in Goosebumps, and the petals are blowing away. It's falling apart, just like ONF City in Goosebumps. That's it. Where do we stand? Where are the boys right now? It's hard to say. I think we still have the versions of the members that are their digitized thoughts and processes that have been uploaded to ONF City. And I think we still have Android versions of themselves that exist on the desolate, apocalyptic world set in reality, where the digitized thoughts and emotions are having a bit of a heyday. It feels like the androids are having the opposite of that, and things are not going well for them. I think this is especially poignant because Wyatt narrates the story film talking about chaos, confusion, and not understanding who he is. And we see hints of that in Y. Now, if Wyatt was constructed in a vat, he's going to have a lot of confusion about where he fits in the world. I still don't know what to do with popping. I still feel like it's near the beginning somewhere. But because we're dealing with time travel and multiverses, what the beginning isn't always straightforward. I've tried in the past to put these music videos on a timeline, and let me tell you, it does not work. I even had a theory where there were 3 distinct timelines, with popping set off by itself. But the more I looked at the music videos, the more I realized it wasn't that clear cut. Honestly, it's all a bit of a mess. And I think the easiest thing to do is to enjoy the imagery and references with a broad stroke. The frustrating part is that ONF puts a lot of extremely detailed references and images into these music videos that lead you down a certain line of thinking that everything must be on purpose. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Now, I'm not saying they don't have a purpose in creating the lore behind these music videos. However, I don't think it's literal. And if you try to organize these videos in any meaningful way, it'll always break down. Now, I'm willing to be wrong, and I'm willing to see where ONF takes us next. Every new ONF music video introduces new lore, and sometimes the things they introduce I think are meaningless, until you get 2 music videos down the line and they bring it back. And that really messes with your head. Well, I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you've had some fun watching it. Again, if you have any ideas or if you think I've missed something, please put it in the comments. I love to read other people's ONF lore posts. And the more eyes we have on everything, the better, because it's more likely we'll all catch something a little bit different, or we'll all interpret the messages in these music videos in a different way because of our different life experiences. So that's it for me, and I'm not quite sure how to wrap up this video. So I think the best way to do that is just to leave you with a montage of MK screaming.
아니야! 아니야!